We just getting started, baby. Did anybody see what Mr. Wardell Steph Curry did to the Portland Trailblazers? They were nobodies. They beat the Giants. Trash. They beat the Broncos. Trash. If you ever watched Dragon Ball Z, my man's was Super Saiyan. I couldn't wear this until we actually caught a dub. And he did all of this damage in 36 minutes. Let that sink in. They beat the Eagles, trash. The Cowboys, trash. The Bengals, trash. The Jaguars, trash. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here on Rob's 2 Cents. My good people, hello world. I'd like to welcome you guys back to the show that's hot with your boy Rob Scott. This is Rob's 2 Cents. What's going on, y'all? I missed y'all, my good people. It feels good to be back. Feel good to be back recording this show. Man, as you guys know, well, most of you guys don't know, I've been down with the injury. So, injured my ankle/foot on ice. Almost fell, planted my foot the wrong way. Knew immediately something was wrong. Got home actually that night of the show that I recorded last Monday. And after I got done recording, man, my ankle was just shot. I couldn't move around the house. Had to call off work. Had to go to the doctor. Thankfully, there was nothing broken, but it was a very bad sprain. I've been issued a walking boot. I've been issued crutches. Spent most of the weekend just laying in bed and trying to keep my ankle ice, keep it elevated. Shout out to my wife for helping your boy take care of, helping your boy get back to somewhat good health. I had to call off today at work just to, finish up resting the ankle. But definitely wanted to get back to getting Rob's 2 Cents off the ground. As you guys see, I've been working, man. I had some big things planned, so I couldn't let these plans stop. You see the nice little backdrop behind me? Your boy looks a little bit more professional now. Rob's 2 Cents ready to take over the land. I told y'all we had some big things in store for 2021. Speaking of this year, speaking of right now, also want to give a huge shout out to my grandmother who just made 95 today, who's still with us, still alive and well. Shout out to you, Grandma. I love you so much. You know you're my blessing, in which that's the reason I call you my grandma blessing. So I hope somebody in the family shows you this episode. Dedicate this episode to you, Grandma. Happy 95th birthday. We wish you around for 95 more years, and I just can't imagine life without you. And I appreciate your sacrifice and everything you've done for our family and keeping us afloat, keeping us united. And we would definitely show you that your teachings have not went right over our head. We're going to apply those to our everyday lives. As you see, Rob's 2 Cents is on the trend upward. But one team that's not on the trend in the right direction is the Portland Trailblazers, because it seems like Portland is on a decline because those injuries are starting to catch up with them. I know you guys came here for the hottest sports conversation in the nation, so let's just get right into Rob's 2 Cents. And our first topic of the day is Portland's decline. Because so far, Portland's had a decent regular season this year. Right now, they're currently sixth place in the hard, tough Western Conference. And it's better than that 8th place position that they were in last year. As we know, last year, they ended in 8th place, had to play in the play-in tournament, made it to the NBA playoffs, in which they had to play LeBron and the Los Angeles Lakers in that first round. We know the story. They were able to get one game on the Lakers, and then after that, the Lakers said enough is enough. They put Portland back in their place, and the Lakers were able to win that series 4-1, and we know that the Lakers were going to win that title. However, Portland came back this year looking good, looking better. They were welcoming back some players like Yusuf Nurkic, welcoming back Rodney Hood, However, the injury bug in Portland has yet again reared its ugly head, because we know Zach Collins, while they're promising young power forward, injured his ankle in the bubble last season, and that same ankle still bothered him. So he had to have a second ankle surgery on that injured ankle, which is keeping him out of this season. There's no expected timetable on here when he'll return, as I don't expect it will be, considering you have to go through rehab and all those necessary things after a big surgery. Also, they lost in mid-January both C.J. McCullough and Yusuf Nurkic. We know with Yusuf, he injured he actually broke his wrist. So he had to have surgery on that. Right now, he's rehabbing a broken wrist. C.J. McCullough fractured his foot. So that's been keeping him down. They both going to be getting reevaluated March 2nd, which will be the day that this episode is aired. So we should have a timetable on them now by the end of the week. And those injuries are just starting to mount up because now you have bench players stepping into starting roles, and Portland is not able to get any productivity out of their bench because right now you're going all the way down the bench just to get some players into the game. And you have to keep players like Damian Lillard on the court a lot longer to try to sustain the losses that you're currently showing right now from C.J. McCullough and Nurkic not being there. So right now, Damian Lillard is trying all that he can to help the Trailblazers stay afloat in a very tough Western Conference. We'll talk more about his numbers later in the show because Dame Lillard is one of those people that comes up in the conversation when it comes to MVP discussion on the year. He's been having a hell of a year. But Portland right now, they've begun to lose games. They're currently on a 4-game losing streak. And we're going to look at their last 5 games and point out what's the common factor in the reason that they're losing these games, because Portland is a pretty decent team. If we look back onto February 17th, that's the last game they won. They went against the New Orleans Pelicans. This was a game in which Dame Dollar just had to go nuclear. He scored 43 points while dishing 16 dimes out there. He was 14 to 28 from the field, 7 to 16 from the three-point line. But we also have to remember that this game came down to the wire. The final score was 126 to 124. Damian Lillard, he had to be clutch. He was able to get a last-minute and one three-point play. He was able to drive. He got the foul, hit the free throw, made the score 126 to 124. We know the story. New Orleans wasn't able to score on their final drive, and then the Portland Trailblazers were able to pull that game out. Now, keep in mind that the bench only had 24 points in this game. But if we look at the next game, they went against a very, very hot Washington Wizards team right now. They're starting to get it together. They're starting to find themselves offensively to get some W's on the map. They went against the Trailblazers, and the Washington Wizards were able to get that victory. Final score being 118 to 111. Dame had a horrendous shooting game that night. He went 10 of 30 from the field. He scored 35 points, but he got this off 30 shots. That's horrible. And not to mention, the bench only gave you 19 points. Bradley Beal continuing to do things he do, led all scorers in that game. Now, if we look at Phoenix, this was just a blowout. Right now, we know Phoenix are one of those top teams in the West. They're in that top 4 discussion. Phoenix right now has been doing their thing. They just flat out blew out the Portland Trailblazers. 132 to 100 was your final score. Now, we know Phoenix is a team that'll play defense with you. So with Portland already being depleted, they just could not stir up any offensive game. And we know Portland can put points on the board, but not that game. Phoenix were able to just put the stop blockers on and just really disrupt Portland for what they wanted to do. Damian Lillard didn't get any help. He was 9 to 17, had 24 points. However, there was only one other starter that scored in double digits. Absolutely no help that game for Damian. And then they go on to Denver. They lose 111 to 106. Nikola Jokic, the Joker, scored 41 points. Just really exposed Portland's interior defense. As we know, Cantor is there in place of Yusuf Nurkic. And not saying that Nurkic is going to change your world defensively. I do believe he's a better defender than Cantor because Jokic just had his way with Cantor. Cantor can score on you, but he can't stop anybody. Yeah, that man is on the defensive side. He's big for no reason. And then we go at the last game, and they would top off that losing streak by losing to the Lakers, and they gave the Lakers a much needed win because the Lakers themselves were actually on a 4-game losing streak going into that game with Portland. So they were able to get a W, welcoming back Dennis Schroeder, of course, that third best player on that team, and got a much needed victory. So while they were ending their 4-game winning streak, they were giving Portland their 4th loss in their 4-game losing streak. So right now, the Portland Trailblazers are just in trouble. They shot horrendous from the three-point line as a team. They was 11-37, and not to mention you only got 13 points from your bench. Melo has been up and down this season. That bench has been up and down this season. So you can definitely feel the loss of C.J. McCollum and Yusuf Nurkic, because let's look at what's happening right now. C.J. McCollum is your second best scorer on this team. So that's a 20-25 points that you're missing on your scoreboard. Not to mention that's less time that Damian Lillard has to play. And he's able to come in those fourth quarter minutes, those important minutes, that money time, as I like to call it. And he's able to come in and be clutch because Damian Lillard has proven himself to be one of the more clutch players in the league. Not to mention, you put everybody back in their natural positions once you start to get C.J. McCollum. Because right now you got Gary Trent Jr. in that starting lineup. You got Rodney Hood in that starting lineup. You got Robert Covington in that starting lineup. So if we're gonna imagine that you have Dame and CJ, there's your 1-2. Is your 1-2 punch. You can play around with either Rodney Hood or Gary Trent Jr. You can put Covington as your 4 and then have Yusuf Nurkic as your 5. So you're gonna put either Gary Trent or Rodney Hood back on the bench. Therefore, you got players coming back in their natural position. You have Melo there to lead that bench, and it's Cantor there to stabilize the interior offense within that bench scoring. And then you have players like Gary Trent Jr., you have players like Rodney Hood, you have players like Anthony Simons coming off that bench and leading that charge. And that way you're able to allow CJ and Dame to get the rest that they need and able to play those fourth quarter minutes, that money time, in order to bring Portland home. So right now, what Portland needs to be doing is just trying to stay afloat because they're going to make some noise in the playoffs, but let's be real. They are not on anybody's watch list to get to that Western Conference Finals when the playoffs begin. So right now, we're interested to see how can Portland translate this into the offseason, the postseason, in which the real money time begins, which is the playoffs. But one team that also has to question what they would do in the playoffs is the Utah Jazz, because if we look at the regular season right now, they look for real. Utah's been playing beautiful team basketball. They are the true definition of team basketball. The Jazz are not only the best in the West, they are the best in the association. They're the best in the league. Utah currently ranks third in points per game, averaging 116 points per game. They're second in rebounds per game, hauling in about 48 rebounds per game, and third in opponents' points per game, only allowing teams to score 107 points against them. Utah plays defense. They have that big man down there, Rudy Gobert, to stabilize the paint. They have those tenacious guards, and Mike Conley, who's probably one of the most underrated players in the league, continues to be so. I would say players like him, players like Drew Holiday, they don't get the love that they deserve, but they are hell of players. They get down on the hardwood, and then you have a great scoring coming from Donovan Mitchell, coming from Mike Conley. You also got Ingles out there. You got Bogey out there. Utah has some pieces. O'Neal, they have some pieces, And right now, those pieces are all clicking together at the right time. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games, including 3-2 in their last 5 games. They're having a great year by Utah standards. And we're going to just discuss the reason of why I believe they're having a great year. First, you have to start off at the top of the food chain, and you have to be looking at your leader, and that is clearly Donovan Mitchell for this team. Since Spider has received that huge payday, I believe he got 196 million, 5 years. Can get up to like an additional. So I think it was like 165, and he got like an additional 25, which brought it to 195. With the additional incentives, like making an All-Star game, which he did. Certain points per game, certain rebounds per game, making all NBA teams. There's certain incentives there if he has a good season to make a lot of money. So he gets this max deal, and he's having a great year so far. He's at 24 points on the season, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. He's also initiating a nice 1-2 punch with Mike Conley. Mike Conley only missed the last game due to rest. They just want to manage his injury, what they call injury management. We know that they lost against the Miami Heat, and then were able to just bounce back and blow out the Orlando Magic. It wasn't even any competition. They clearly showed that they were the best team in the league. But like I said, Utah's test is going to come in that playoffs. But this is a different Utah team, because we're looking at what Donovan Mitchell's doing. We're looking at the continuity with him and Mike Conley, which they didn't have much last year because they're 2 ball-dominant guards. We look at what Mike Conley had to do with the Memphis Grizzlies. He had the ball in his hand for most of his stint with the Grizzlies, because he had to get everybody in their places. He got Marc Gasol in his place. He got a big Zebo in his place. He got Tony Allen in his place. So Memphis had relied a lot on Mike Conley to be a true point guard. But coming into the situation with Utah, Donovan Mitchell also has the ball in his hand a lot of the time. So he was getting people in their place. He had Ricky Rubio, but Ricky Rubio to me is not what you would call a I don't want to say this without disrespecting his game. He's more of a flashy guard, okay? He's going to do a couple of passes. You're going to go, ooh, how did he do that? But he's not what I would call a stable point guard at that position. A lot of nights Rubio wouldn't show up. And I believe the difference between him and Mike Conley is Mike Conley is hard hat lunch pail. He's going to come in, he's going to clock in, he's going to do work, he's going to clock out, go home after a hard day's work. It's nothing against Ricky Rubio, but Mike Conley is a better point guard than Ricky Rubio. We just got to keep it real. And then we look at their dark horse on that team. That's Jordan Clarkson. We're talking about a guy that, without a shot of a doubt to me, is running away with the 6th man of the year. He's averaging 18 points coming off the bench. Just instant offense. The guy comes in off the bench, and his only job is to go get a bucket. And that's what he does. He gets buckets. He's a professional scorer. We saw what he did against the Lakers when he played. I mean, this dude, he was showing them, I shouldn't have been the one that got traded, Brian. But Jordan Clarkson has just been a beast off that bench. And Donovan Mitchell mentioned it. You remember last year how Utah ended their season is they made it to the playoffs, but they lost to the Denver Nuggets in that first round. And they were the first team that Denver made that historic run on. No, they lost to them in the second round. Apologies. They were the first team it was the first round. I was right. They was the first team that Denver made that historic run on when Denver came back from a 3-1 deficit. Utah had them down 3-1. Lost that game. That left a bad taste in Donovan Mitchell's mouth, which it should. If you're a competitive guy, taking losses like that is not what you want to hang your hat on. So Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz has come back with the vengeance. They're playing some of the best basketball in the league right now. And I'm gonna give them that because they have been playing. This is probably one of their better regular seasons that they had in a long time. Probably not since the Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer era, or even going back as far as the John Stockton, Karl Malone era. So right now, Utah is playing some amazing basketball, and they look to make some noise out there in the mountains, out there in Utah. However, again, can Utah translate these regular season wins to playoff victories? Are you going to be the best team in the league when the playoffs start? We have yet to see this from Utah, and we hope that we can see this from Utah when the postseason begins, because if not, you're just going to always be known as a regular season team. And even though Donovan Mitchell has been a great player for Utah, Utah is built around team chemistry. But these next players that I'm going to be discussing are who we have right now in the running for MVP. So we know this past Friday, the NBA on NBA.com released this Kia's MVP list, which consisted of their top 5 players. These top 5 players being Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, and Dame Dollar. However, we're going to talk about why they chose them as their top 5, and then I'm going to tell you my top 5. So if we look at number 1 on that list, we have Joel Embiid. He's kind of moved to that number 1 spot when LeBron was going through those losing streaks, going through those troubles. As you know, Anthony Davis is down with that Achilles. He's down with that calf injury. And he was also without Dennis Schroeder, who was away from the team due to the NBA COVID protocols. So not having his second and third best player, LeBron dropped down in rank when it comes to MVP because he was not able to get the Los Angeles Lakers over that hump. Now we know over the last 2 games, he welcomed back Dennis Schroeder. However, in those times that he was waiting to get some help, Joel Embiid kind of moved to the number 1 spot on the NBA's MVP list. Now this past Thursday, Joel Embiid led the 76ers to their 4th win out of their last 5 games against a very disappointing Dallas Mavericks team. This season, Joel Embiid's averaged about 29.6 points per game, 11.2 rebounds per game, 3.1 assists per game, 1.3 blocks per game, and 1.3 steals per game. He's having a terrific season, including a 50-point career game that he did against, of course, the Chicago Bulls. Now, we know that this past weekend that he lost a game to Cleveland, but we can really attest that to the Orlando Magic. The Philadelphia 76ers not being at their best right now. They lost Tobias Harris, who thankfully only has a knee bruise, a knee contusion. So he's not going to miss too many games for the rest of the season. However, he is going to, need to sit down and get some rest to get that bruising out of that knee. But we do know Tobias Harris is probably the dark horse for the 76ers. They go as he goes. However, the thing to look for is Joel Embiid in his last 3 games, he shot 26%. In the last 3 games before they beat Dallas, he shot 26%. Shooting 26% as a 7-footer is not good. That means you're taking too many shots outside the paint. You're not going to your strong suit, even though we know Joel Embiid can score. Joel Embiid can shoot the ball from the perimeter. He can shoot from the 3-point line. He can score. He's a 3-level scorer. But his bread and butter is when he's down there banging in the paint. And sometimes Joel Embiid shows he don't like to get dirty down there. However, with the way that he's been playing, right now I have him a little bit at number 1, edged over LeBron, and so does NBA, which brings us to number 2, which would be LeBron James. Now, as mentioned before, LeBron James, who's this is his 18th season. Right now he's averaging 25.6 points a game, 8.1 rebounds per game, 8 assists per game, 1.5 and 1.5 steals per game. He was number one on this list last week, but the Lakers have lost their last 4 games before they won the 2 games against the Warriors, and then also I forgot who they just played. Against the Trailblazers. So they beat the Trailblazers and then they beat the Warriors as well. The Warriors they just beat this past Sunday. Let's just say they did more than beat. They blew the Warriors out. LeBron didn't have to do much. He came in, scored 19 points in 24 minutes, didn't play the entire fourth quarter. That game was kind of over with in the second quarter. The Lakers came out and did their thing. But prior to Dennis Schroeder coming back and assisting LeBron and helping the Lakers beat the Trailblazers and the Golden State Warriors, the Lakers, like I mentioned before, were on a 4-game losing streak. So that put LeBron at second. Third on the NBA's list was Nikola Jokic. As we know, the Joker's also had some pretty great games this season, just had a triple-double, and Denver's win over OKC this past, it was either Saturday or Sunday. Denver went out there, did their thing. Was a great game. Final score was 126-96. As I mentioned before, Jokic had a triple-double. Murray led them in scoring. This year, he's averaged 26.9 points per game, 10.9 rebounds per game, 8.1 assists per game. 1.7 steals per game, and even though he's having a great season, Denver has been inconsistent. As we look at their last 5 games, they won a game, lost a game, won a game, lost a game, won a game. That's pretty much how their season has been so far, with the inconsistencies of Michael Porter Jr. Murray has been pretty solid this year, but he has his moments, and their defensive inconsistencies. Right now, Denver is not playing defense. You're able to go into Denver, kind of have your way with them. Nikola Jokic is not somebody that's just going to stand out to you as a top-notch interior defender. So the teams happen to do what they do against Denver. Especially, too, let's talk about that Washington Wizards loss, because how do you have a 4-on-1 break in the last 3 seconds of the game, and the best shot you get off is to somebody of a name that I don't even know. I don't even know who that was that took that last shot. First of all, you have a 4-on-1 fast break. Why is nobody cutting to the rim? That was a horrible kids. If you guys are watching that Denver Nuggets game against the Wizards, you never perform a fast break like that. You score. If it's 4-on-1, you best believe somebody better be cutting to that hole. You better be going to the rim. You have a chance to tie up the game. Not every shot needs a 3-point. You don't need to end it with a 3. We could have took them into overtime. We could have won that game. However, you decided that on a 4-on-1 fast break, everybody is going to rush to the 3-point line. That was horrible. That was trash. I had a shame on you segment, but I had time to calm down since then, especially dealing with my own injury. But Denver, that was trash. You guys definitely needed that win against OKC. But that Washington game is going to be a thorn in your side, and you better hope a game like that doesn't dictate the type of season you're going to have, because right now they're going back and forth with the Warriors, fighting between 7th and 8th position. Then we look at number 4. We have Steph Curry, which is ironic. He is the leader for the Golden State Warriors. This year, he's averaging about 30 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, 6.3 assists per game, and 1.2 steals per game. He has the Warriors looking like a Cinderella story, because everybody had the Warriors pretty much wrote off. Nobody had the Golden State Warriors in playoff contention. Remember, they lost KD to the Brooklyn Nets. Klay Thompson was expected to make his return back to the roster. He injures his ACL during a summer league practice or during a summer league shoot around. So now you're without Klay for the rest of the season. Draymond has been in and out of the lineup. As you see, we just lost Draymond last night against on Sunday night against the Los Angeles Lakers. I think he now has another ankle injury. Steph has been a little bit off and on with his shooting. However, he has to take, if Steph doesn't score 25 points, the Golden State Warriors are not even in the conversation to even win the game. They're not even in the conversation to be in the game. They're gonna, if he's not scoring, as we saw last night, I mean on Sunday night, he only had 16 points against the Los Angeles Lakers. They were blew out by the second quarter. He needs to score at least 30 for them to have a chance to win the game. But as I mentioned, he does have the Warriors right now currently sitting in 8th place, I believe. So the Golden State Warriors, if it ended, the season ended today, they'll be in the play-in tournament. However, they will be in a discussion to possibly be in the playoffs. And to me, that is a successful season for the Golden State Warriors. And then at 5, we rounded out with Damian Lillard. Pretty much the same situation as I mentioned earlier. Dame Dollar, he's averaging 29.6 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game, 8.9 assists per game, and 1 steal per game. And they are another Cinderella story. As I mentioned last year, Portland was in the play-in tournament. This year, they're currently sitting in 6th place in the West, trying to stay out of that bottom 2 positions, so that way they know that they have a clear-cut path to the playoffs, waiting on players like C.J. McCullough and Yusuf Nurkic to return back to the lineup, and hopefully the healthier that Portland gets, Portland will begin to reach their potential, because right now Portland hasn't been playing to their potential right now, as I mentioned, on a current 4-game losing streak. Now, if we look at my top 5, I will agree with Joel Embiid being 1, and I'll agree with LeBron being 2. However, I'm going to slide James Harden in that 3rd position, because since coming to Brooklyn, James Harden is leading the league in assists. And we've seen what he's done with this Brooklyn team. We have to remember, Brooklyn has not played with their full roster for majority of their season. Either KD has been gone, or Kyrie has been gone, or all 3 have been off the court. They didn't have James Harden to begin with at the beginning of the season, I believe, for their first 5 to 10 games until that trade happened. So you have a James Harden that has come in and has just changed life for the Brooklyn Nets. Like I said, leading them in assists, just easily maintaining a triple-double average. James Harden is the real deal, and we just have to imagine that when KD and Kyrie does come back, when the Brooklyn Nets are at a fully healthy, standing as a fully healthy team, they are going to be the scariest team in the NBA, because we've seen what they've done without probably the most gifted scorer in the NBA, which is Kevin Durant. They've been doing this damage without KD. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games, and Brooklyn has just been on fire. They only lost their last game because Kyrie wasn't there, and James Harden just didn't have any more magic left in the hat, and Brooklyn wasn't able to pull out that last game. Against Dallas, and Luka was just out there having himself a great game. However, James Harden has proven himself to be in that MVP conversation. I would say my 4th place person in that MVP race would be Nikola Jokic, and then 5th we'll round it out with Damian Lillard. I would have to remove Steph from that equation just based off those 5 players' performances who I just mentioned. It's going to be interesting to see, because right now there's no clear-cut winner for the MVP trophy. At first it was LeBron, but with him going on that losing streak, Joel Embiid was able to step up and take that number 1 spot. But like I mentioned, he had 3 games where he only scored 26%. All that goes into account. So right now that race looks to be coming down to the wire. I believe at the end of the season, though, James Harden will be holding that trophy. Got a couple quick hits before we end the show. Russell Wilson. He's not demanding a trade, but he had a discussion with the radio show, and he said that if he did decide to leave the Seattle Seahawks, there's 4 teams who he will be interested into going to, and only these 4 teams will he be willing to go play for on their roster. That would be the Dallas Cowboys, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New Orleans Saints, or the Chicago Bears. And the Bears definitely, I know that there's probably no chance in hell for us to get Russell Wilson because it looks like the Bears stupidly are going to be sticking with Nick Foles and thinking that Nick Foles is our current future right now. Shame on you, Chicago. But it would be interesting to see Russell Wilson with our group of receivers. He's a little bit more accurate than both Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. And we do know we have some speedsters on our receivers line. So a lot of the times our receivers were able to beat people and we just couldn't give them the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I do still see Russell Wilson suiting up for the Seattle Seahawks, but it was just interesting that he brought that up, especially because Dallas is going through the debacle right now with Dak Prescott. Las Vegas, we don't know what the future for Derek Carr is. We don't know if Drew Brees is going to officially retire in New Orleans. He hasn't made an official statement saying that he's going to retire. And then with the Chicago Bears, like I mentioned, we got the Trubisky and Nick Foles fiasco going on right now. And speaking of quarterback troubles, Deshaun Watson, he's also on our list today as he had a talk with new head coach David Culley, who's African-American, by the way. I just have to put that into perspective because a lot of the topic is always a big topic in the NFL is that there are no African-American head coaches in the league. They're very far and few in between. So in order to have, we finally get a black head coach. And, of course, his quarterback doesn't want to play for him. But we're not going to play that media game because that's not what we do here on Rob's 2 Cents. In reality, Deshaun Watson was ready to leave the Houston Texans before David Culley got there as the head coach. And Deshaun Watson was respectful enough to go to new head coach David Culley and let him know, hey, nothing against you, nothing against your coaching staff that you're going to put into place here, or your coaching beliefs or teachings on how to or lessons on how you teach the game. I just don't want to suit up for the Houston Texans. I still do want to trade. I still do want to explore my options out there with other teams. And I believe that was probably a great conversation had between him and new head coach David Culley. Also, big news coming out of Houston. J.J. Watt signed a 2-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. And he did go and he checked the bag. He signed a 2-year deal worth $30 million with $23 million being guaranteed with the Arizona Cardinals. We know that Arizona, they had a pretty great young offense. He's going to be one of the many great defensive players added to that NFC West division. As you know, that's a division that has the Los Angeles Rams out there, with Aaron Donald and now you adding a J.J. Watt. So definitely something to look out for. That's going to be a very, very interesting division when the NFL starts back up. Happy for J.J. Watt. Happy he's able to get his money. Hope he's able to stay healthy and able to help lead his team to glory, lead them to NFL playoff berth. Also, we saw Canelo Alvarez fight and Avni Yildirim over this past Saturday. Anvi he came in looking to take away the WBC and the WBA super middleweight championship from Canelo. Canelo currently at 55 wins, 37 by knockout. Only had one loss, which was to Floyd Mayweather, and had 2 draws. Yildirim came in with 21 wins, 12 by knockout, and 3 losses. He lost to Canelo Alvarez by TKO. Let me tell y'all, Canelo came in there and he did not play with that boy. Canelo, the fight ended in 3 rounds. Canelo came out on fire. Canelo, they both were filling each other out that first round. Jabbing. Yildirim really didn't throw any significant punches throughout the fight. He threw one left counter hook in the third. However, when that second round began, Canelo began to connect with uppercuts to the body, uppercuts to the chin. I mean, he was having his way with Yildirim. And then that third round came, and Canelo was able to size him up with a left straight, and boom, hit him with that right straight, which put Yildirim down. Down went Yildirim, and Canelo was able to just capitalize on the rest of that round. Yildirim did get back up, beating the 10 count. He got up with a smile on his face, but Canelo caught him with another left to the body. That one really hurt Yildirim. And once the bell rung on that third round, Yildirim went to his corner, talked to his manager. His manager was already threatening to throw in the towel because Yildirim wasn't letting his punches go. But Yildirim didn't want any more, and he said no mas to Canelo, and Canelo was able to get that that TKO victory. And his next fight will be against Billy Joe Saunders, who is the current WBO super middleweight championship. So this next fight will be a fight to combine the middleweight championships. He's also a sensation out of Mexico. And Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo Alvarez will look to fight on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Keeping it for boxing on the moment, there's also rumors that Anthony Joshua will be going against Tyson Fury to unite the heavyweight championships. As you know, Tyson Fury, current WBC heavyweight champion, defeating Deontay Wilder, a couple of years ago, and then Anthony Joshua being the WBO, WBA heavyweight champion of the world. So they're looking to unite those titles. If the rumors are true, then the fight should be happening sometime in June. If not, Tyson Fury has stated that he does still plan to fight twice this year, as he's ready to put the titles on the line and dust the old boxing gloves off. And guys, I know that you guys know that I have been ending my show talking about somebody who has contributed to African American culture, talking about athletes of color. And I know Black History Month is over with, but considering the fact that I didn't get to do my show on Friday, I wanted to do my show today and end it off the right way, talking about a man who knows all about adversity and knows all about the color restrictions that used to happen back in the day. And that man would be Bill Russell. Born William Felton Russell, he's an all-time NBA champion, including he's a 9-time NBA champion, including the last 2 rings that he won, which would make a total of 11, being as player and as coach. So altogether, he's won 11 NBA championships, 9 as strictly a player, and 2 as a player and a head coach in the league. 2-time NCAA champion and a 5-time MVP of the league. Also, he's a holder of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which was awarded to Mr. Russell in 2011 by Mr. President Barack Obama for his role that he played in the civil rights movement. As we know, Bill Russell played basketball in a time where colored athletes were not welcome into the mainstream media. He played for probably one of the most racist cities in the world, being Boston. I've never been there before, but I've heard stories about how they get down in Boston. And I've heard things have changed, so I'm not here to condemn Boston, but during that time, Mr. Russell went through some things. He even had situations where he couldn't even stay at the same hotel as his white teammates, or eat at the same restaurant, or even leave out the same door. They had to try to sneak him in the back. He would be he would have racial slurs yelled at him on the basketball court. And he was able to endure All of these things and able to stand strong with class and with dignity. Not everything he said was perfect, as he had controversial statements in his career. But you can imagine the frustration that somebody like that that somebody had to go through. Being on a team, with white and black, with other, men, not regarding the color, and having to leave out different doors. I have to eat the scraps. While you guys go in this restaurant and eat this good food, I have to eat the scraps that they don't want. Even when he was made head coach of the Boston Celtics while he was still playing, you know, people didn't think he can do it. People didn't think he was smart enough to lead that team, and he was one of the people that stood with Muhammad Ali when Ali was going through that whole situation about not going to fight in the Vietnam War. So Bill Russell was a man of class, was a man of dignity, was a man of honor. And he's still, loved in today's NBA. Definitely a person I would love to meet and just pick his brain and just talk and get that knowledge and wisdom that Mr. Russell possesses. I'm just appreciative of him, fighting through all that and making the sacrifice for people like myself to do what I love, which is talk sports, because we wouldn't have any representation in any of these leagues without players like Mr. Bill Russell, like Mr. Jackie Robinson, like Mr. Muhammad Ali. So we appreciate those players and their contribution to what they've done, and not just American culture, but in all of culture. Being an ambassador around the world, showing people that black people, we are good people too. And that's my show, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys for showing up. As for me, I'm going to continue to ice my ankle, ice my foot, try to get myself together for work tomorrow. And I hope you guys have a great evening. Again, happy birthday to my grandmother, celebrating her 95th birthday. We love you, Grandma, and I love you guys. I appreciate you guys for continuing to motivate me. And I'm going to bring you the hot sports topics by any means necessary. Hey, I hope you guys have a great one. Remember to like this video, share this video, subscribe. Get your friends to come watch the hottest sports conversation in the nation. I'm also available on Spotify and iTunes under Rob's 2 Cents. You see how I spell, baby. When you see the logo, you know you're at the right spot. I hope you guys have a great one. Be safe out here in these COVID streets. Continue to be great in life. And you know the slogan, baby. We gone. There's a bigger fight going on. There's a much bigger agenda than the streets. And I know sometimes it's hard to see that far in front of us, but we have to look past the illusions, look past the delusions of grandeur, and look at the bigger picture. We need to become better versions of ourselves each and every day. Fight for what you believe in. Because if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. We just getting started, baby. You guys know the slogan now. Hope you all have a great evening. And we gone.